I enjoy being at the Langleys, love their hospitality of opening their home to have us in here. And what I always enjoyed is that we had a packed house on Wednesday, and I stood in the back, and I love that Margaret has her essential oils right there. I honestly go back there, I have to smell and stuff like that. She's probably like, what? And they're gone. And I noticed that.
We keep knocking them off. I broke 2 bottles.
Well, in its place, I noticed something. You have a sign there, and it is Psalm 46. And it's not the whole psalm, but it is a considerable portion of it. And if you turn over to Psalm 46, this will not be our lesson text tonight, but tonight, how about this morning? It's not going to go that long, don't worry, we're not going that long. It'll be our lesson text I want to talk about, because there's a phrase in here that we see and we hear a lot. But I want us to look at verse 1. Michael, if you could read Psalm 46, verse 1 for me.
God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
And if you could also read verse 10, please.
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
Verse 10 specifically, we see that a lot. We see it whether on things that we put in our home, we see it phrased. But I want you to look at something and mark in there, because I find this interesting. Be still and know that I am God. It is actually only 3 Hebrew words. The word is just still. It's the action that we have to be calm. The next word is God, as we can see it right there. Or I say that's Elohim, that's the last one. The second word is just to know. So there is a sense of being still by knowing God in trouble, in difficulty. And so what I'd like to do today is one of my favorite parts of Old Testament history. Let me pull up my notes here. One of my favorite parts of Old Testament history is leaving in the Exodus as they proceed on to the Promised Land, and everything that happens in the middle of that. If you turn over to 1 Corinthians, we're not going to read there yet, we will be there shortly, but if you look at 1 Corinthians 10, you will see exact imagery from leaving Egypt to the Promised Land, and it is compared to, why are we talking about it this morning? The Christian life. And what I want to look at today is that as we see this leaving, we've seen the comparison before where you have leaving out of Egypt. Well, Egypt, as referred to in Romans, was bondage, was sin. And they left that. How did they leave that? By going through the Red Sea. As you'll see in 1 Corinthians 10, it says they were baptized through Moses' baptism, a direct correlation to the Christian life. And as they proceed forth from baptism, they have so much going on there that leads into the wilderness wandering before they ever reach their final destination, crossing the Jordan into the Promised Land. That sounds a lot like us, doesn't it? We leave sin behind. We go through baptism that washes that sin off, and our life begins. What I want to look along the way is that we know they complained. We know they had issues, but I don't want us to think that those were isolated to just those years of wandering. That it was just those Israelites, the Hebrews, that went through that. Because after baptism, that's when difficulty begins. Once we are a part of the Lord's church, there's things that come up. I want to look at what happened to them back then and make the conclusion that the same thing happens to us today. So let's go, and we're going to look at the very first one. It's actually the building of the golden calf. Look at Exodus chapter 32. If you look at Exodus 32, and Will, could you read verse 1 through 6, please? And this is where we see the delaying of Moses, and what did they do? He'll tell you in just a second. Go ahead.
Now when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And Aaron said to them, Break up the golden earrings which are in the ears of your which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people broke off the golden earrings, which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron, and received the gold from their hands as he fashioned it with the engraving tool and made a molten calf. Then they said, This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, Tomorrow is the feast to the Lord. And they rose early on the next day, offering burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and then the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play.
I want you to take notice. We know this passage well, but look at verse 1. That where did this begin? And when they saw that Moses delayed. I've always wondered this, and there is, I'll be honest, no definitive answer, but if you look at when they left Egypt and when you see that they came to certain places into Sinai, you can see months, and we know the Jewish calendar. Best estimation between 50 and 60 days. I want that number to stick out. They crossed the Red Sea, and within 50 to 60 days, they were already building the golden calf. Now let's take that to New Testament Christianity. We say this, but boy, I want this to stick in our minds. Because as we prepare always as a congregation for Bible studies, for evangelizing, teaching the truth, and then, Lord willing, as He provides, someone coming to the obedience to the gospel, when they are a new Christian, I want you to think 50 to 60 days. Because to me, I always look at the story of like, you just went through the sea. You're looking at Mount Sinai. It's thundering. You know the Lord's presence is there. You haven't seen Moses because he's up there talking. He's like, I know. We need to build a golden calf. Within 50 to 60 days, when things don't work out the way we think it is supposed to, what does it say in verse 1? Where's Moses? I don't know. But I know what we need to do. We need to build our own God. We need to create our own God. Within 50 to 60 days of crossing the Red Sea, they had already turned away from God. And that is a warning, not just for new Christians, but for us always. When things don't go how we think it's supposed to go, that's not when you turn back on God. You mentioned a whole lot of things I'm going to allude to in the lesson today. Did Job turn his back on God when he lost his income, his savings, his children? Did he turn his back on him?
No.
No, he did not. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. When things don't work out exactly how we think, we don't turn against God. Did God remove himself? Was he not there? No, he was there. If you go to Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 16 through 21, if you turn over there, Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 16 through 21. Paul, could you read that for me, please? This is Moses' recounting of that incident. Verse 16 through 21. Go ahead.
9.
Yes, 9, 16 through 21.
Okay. And I saw that you had indeed sinned against the Lord your God, and had made great show of the molten calf, and you turned aside quickly from the way which the Lord had commanded you. I took hold of the two tablets and threw them down from my hand, and smashed them before your eyes. I fell down before the Lord as of the first 40 days and nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water because of your sin, which you committed in doing that evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to fear. For I was afraid of the anger and the hot displeasure of the Lord was wrathful against you in order to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me that time also. The Lord is angry enough with Aaron to destroy him, so I also prayed for Aaron that at the same time. I took your sinful thing, the calf which you have made, and burned it with fire, and crushed it, and grinding it into very small until it was fine as dust. And I threw the dust into the brook that came down from the mountain.
Thank you so much. I can think of very few places in the Bible where that would be a lasting impression on someone. Destroying this golden calf. And notice what he started in verse 16? In 16 it says, so quickly you turned away from the Lord's commands. This is the big care and concern that we have, is that we cannot turn away from God's commands when things aren't working the way we think they're supposed to. And what they had fallen into, let's put the word to it, it's idolatry. They created the golden calf. Okay, this is what this guy is that for Bible class, Aaron made a little golden calf. And it's we stepped somewhere, I remember, but it was in a closet. So with all the moving around for our stuff, that was one thing that was like left in the closet that nobody saw. So all the workers are going through and they wouldn't touch it. They just left the golden calf. Like, but I'm not going to tell them. Conversation point later. But the point of idolatry is that I know there's God. I know there's God. Boy. And if you go back to what you read, I'm sorry. What you read was that they didn't just make this golden calf and let's just worship this golden calf. If you go back and look at what Aaron said, they were going to mix it. Let's make a feast to the Lord. They tried to mix they tried to mix the commandments of the Lord and idolatry. Will that work ever? No. We need to know that there is the right way. As Moses pointed out, saying how quickly you turned away from the commandments of the Lord. That means there's commandments of the Lord then, and guess what, guys? James 1 sees we are now in the perfect law of liberty. There is a right and wrong. And no, we have to have the attitude in all of this, but we have to recognize that there is a commandment from the Lord that we have to follow. I'm not going to step on your lesson for this afternoon. Acts 7, Stephen speaks just a little bit about their idolatry, how they turned away and things like that. So the obvious lesson is this. As we looked at Psalm 46, is to be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God, and I have a plan for you. There's so many easy lessons. What's your golden calf in life? However you want to apply that section, that one point right there, but we can easily make them. The very last verse, I always remember this, 1 John chapter 5, the last verse, what does it say? My little children, stay away from idols. Whatever your translation may say, stay away from idols. You might have looked over while you were in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 11, 12, 13. It speaks right into idolatry. This is just one point in these things, but I want to hammer this point in because idolatry doesn't mean just making the little golden calf. It's anything that takes you off God and puts it on something else. It can be work. It can be activities that we are a part of. Individuals. It can be anything that takes us off of God. But to remember, to stay away from that, to be still and know that I am God. Point number 2. They grumbled and they complained. That's what they did. And we can go back and we can see it is that in Exodus 16, verse 2 and 3. We go over to Exodus 16, 2 and 3. Logan, if you can get those. And what we see here, I want you to take note of something. When they wandered, even before the years of wandering, I want you to ask, did God not take care of them? No, He took care of them. They had everything they needed, but go ahead.
Exodus 16, 2 and 3. When the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness, the children of Israel said to them, "Oh, that we had died in the hands of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger."
You mentioned in your lesson 2 Timothy 3:12 that we're going to suffer persecution as Christians. That's for Christians today. Guess what? They had difficulty back then. But what were they doing here? Let's remember this imagery. They wanted to go back where? To Egypt. Now, what's the comparison to New Testament Christianity? That's sin. There's people today. Man, I don't like this life. I don't want to do this. I want to go back to my old life. And it's murmuring, it's complaining. They had everything they were, but as you can see in verse 3, they even dreamt about that. Oh, if we could only be back in that. You were a slave. You had no ability to do it. Yeah, but we had great pots of meat. They held on to something and they couldn't see that God was actually taking care of them. They complained against what God had given them, and they had forgotten that He was there. And so they complained about it. In Numbers 11, verses 1 through 6, we don't have to read that, but this also, mark that one. Now, that's a good one. We don't have time to read it, but Numbers 11, 1 through 6, guess what they complained about? Oh, manna again? They were fully provided for by God. And so let's take it today. It's real easy. It is very easy for us to lose sight of our blessings. It is very easy for us to lose sight of the gratitude that we should be having. I'm going to tell you a story I told earlier. Since we are not in our house right now and we're living in the camper, and you have to handle a lot of things when it's 100 degrees outside with the camper, I told Billy that yesterday the Lord sent me a little cloud that covered the sun for about 5 minutes. That little cloud I never would have considered before, but it made me grateful that I had 5 minutes of 90-degree weather instead of 100 degrees when I was trying to do something out there. But isn't that the case? That's just a small illustration. Is that every day we should be grateful what God has given us. There are things that we find in our life, it's like, this is so annoying. Are you all safe? Is your family healthy? Do you have food on the table? I mean, this is the most basic things here, and they were easily provided for, but it wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't what they liked. But sometimes we have to realize that God has given us so much. In Philippians 2:14 and 15, you read that this morning. Let's look at verse 15 as well. So go to Philippians 2:14 and 15. Billy, could you get that, please?
Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world.
I've said it before, but I was asked this morning, when parenting the kids, did we have memory work for them to do? This is a good one. If you're looking at it to be memory work for your kids, Philippians 2:14 is a good one. Do all things without murmuring and complaining. But it sticks out in their mind. But don't forget 15. Don't complain. Don't murmur. Why? That you may be light that shines in this generation. There were the remnant. We don't know their name, but back then they didn't complain what God had given them. They were majority? No. A remnant never indicates a majority. But the remnant back then, let us be the same today, to not murmur and complain. And I'm speaking to myself. I laugh now. I think it was like a month ago. When someone cuts me off in traffic now, I'm like, oh, it's okay. He's probably living in an RV with his whole family. That's why I look at it now. But it hasn't been bad. Don't get me wrong. He's made a wonderful home out there. But still, it makes you more appreciative, and it makes you really take stock in what you have. And it's something that I have to remember. Like all preachers, we get up and we say, this lesson is just for me. Oh, it was written for me. I just hope it helps you as well. Let's go to the next one. So we have, what did we have? The idolatry that can lead us away from God. We have the murmuring and complaining that they did. Then we had Korah. Let's turn over to Numbers chapter 16. Do not worry, we're not going to read 1 through 35. But we know about Korah's rebellion. We know that Korah went to Moses and said, this is too much for you. And we can see what happened to Korah and the others that were with him. And when we nail down what exactly had happened, it was a rebellion. And what was it a rebellion against? Moses? Yes, but on a greater sense what? Against God's chosen leadership. That's a big one. And if you don't think it's a big deal, read all of number 16 and you'll see it. Their death, their timely demise, I would say, were based on the fact that they did not respect who God had put in charge of their group. So much so, go to Jude. Jude chapter 1. Michael, if you could read verse 11. You could read Jude, verse 11, please. This is in the context, before you get started, this is in the context of false teachers. This is in those who are rebellious against God's people. Any kind of classification that you really want in this. And we can see what he says. Go ahead.
Just 11.
Just 11.
Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, have run greedily in the error of Balaam the prophet, and perished in the rebellion of Korah.
When we look at it, it's very small. But when you see rebellion, it is used considerably in the Old Testament about referring to this, the rebellion. And what is rebellion? It is the wish to overthrow, the wish to overtake, the wish to control, and not be governed. What do we have in the New Testament church today where this can apply? We have elders. Not in this congregation, and Lord willing. I just want, we will set in those things that are lacking when we have qualified men to do that. But in congregations where there are elders, and I always use your dad as an example, no matter what the elders put forward, he respected the position, and he would shut them out. I've seen it. I have seen your dad do that. He would shut them out, the people that would speak against elders. And that's the way we should be too. There's personality differences, there's things like that, but ultimately, qualified men put into that role are there because God has appointed that position. And we are to respect that. And I have seen where congregants want to not do what an eldership says, and just because, not because of scriptural reasons, but just because they just don't want to do it. We've talked about things before, and that's not the situation I'm talking about. I'm talking just specifically about situations where I don't like the color of the carpet. You had mentioned that. And we're going to rise up against that. I have seen that happen. Is that respecting God's authority? What he has put into place? No. And there is a way that you go to elders and you can talk to them, you can discuss things with that, but you do not despise the position, because that's what Korah did. Oh, he was slick though. He tried to be nice. Oh, you take on too much, Moses. You need help. But even the same thing was mentioned the other day with Aaron and Miriam not respecting the position that Moses had. And so we have to remember this, is that what God has put into place. Look at Hebrews 13, verse 17. Look if you can get that. Hebrews 13, verse 17. We covered this not too many chapters ago. I think Daniel did this one, but go ahead and read it when you get it.
Obey those who rule over you, and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls. As those who must give account, let them do so with joy and not with grief. That will be unprofitable for you.
Thank you very much. I want you to break that verse in two. Obey those that rule over you. And what was the next one?
And be submissive.
And be submissive to them. That's what people remember when they read verse 17. Obey those who rule over you. We're talking about elders. And be submissive to them. Is that true? Yes, it is. But now, why do we have to work so hard to keep that? Read the next part of the verse, because this is what responsibility is on them. Go ahead.
They watch out for your souls.
They watch out for your souls. They have a hard job. It says an elder is worthy of double honor. You know why? Because they have double duty. They have to not just watch out for them and their spouse and their children. They're watching out for the souls of the congregation. We don't rebel against elders. That is God's anointed position. And so let us remember that. Also, I want to look at this. This is the fourth point, final point that I want to bring up today. And this is actually what we get quite a bit from 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And I'm going to read, starting in verse 1. And I want us to get this whole, this gives you the idea, the imagery of this relating to the New Testament Christian life. And it reads in verse 10, verse 1, Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all of our fathers were under the cloud. All passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and the sea. All ate the same spiritual food, and all ate the same spiritual drink. Here we go. For they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. But with some of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Who are these people? Who are you talking about, Paul? Now these things became our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted. Those people in the wilderness, as they wandered, had no idea that they would actually be written about as an example of what they did. You think that might have changed their minds on some things? If your actions were going to be recorded for all of time, look at verse 7. And do not become idolaters, as some of them, as it was written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up and played, nor let you commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell. Nor let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted and were just destroyed by serpents. Let's stop on that one just for a second. They tempted God. They tried God. Can we do the same to Christ today? Absolutely. We have to remember that He has all authority in heaven and earth and over the church. And what He says goes. I've mentioned this before. One of the best evangelistic messages of all time was Jesus' mother Mary. At the wedding feast of Cana, when she turns to the servant and says, what he says, do. And so we can too also tempt Christ if we don't do what He says. Look at verse 10. Nor complain, as some of them also complained, or were destroyed by the destroyers. Verse 11. Now all these things happen to them as examples, and they were written for admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. And let's close this out with 12 and 13 with this. Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except such as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will make the way of escape, that you will be able to bear it. We see this comparison right here. And we can see that it was because of their unbelief. We can see it was because of their disobedience. This happened to them. And all of this is encouched in the idea of the Psalm 46, verse 10, but be still and know that I'm God. All of these, if we stop for a minute, we can remember that He is with us. We can remember that He is in control even when life seems out of control. I invite you at times, we just don't have time to do it, read there we go. Psalm 46, thank you. Psalm 46, and specifically what that sign really spoke to me is the portion, you don't have to read that, I can read it. What it says is that when the mountains crumble into the sea, and the sea foams and roars and hits the mountain, that's a terrible paraphrase, it's so much better then, but you see that. Does life ever seem like this? Yes, it does. When it feels like the mountains are falling to the seas and the seas foam about you in rage, be still and know that I am God. The answer is not to flee to idolatry and find, something else other than God's going to take care of this for me. I know it is. The answer is not to complain. It is not to grumble. It is not to rebel against God or what God has put into place. And it is sure not. The answer is sure not to be an unbeliever and to be disobedient. What is unbeliever? In New Testament, Greek, atheos, atheist. Someone who is the same as someone who does not believe God. And so what I want you to consider today is that there are storms in our lives. There are raging oceans and seas. There are mountains that will fall down. But we have to remember that God is there. And we must remain faithful to Him because He is going to be faithful to us. I think about it, and I've never actually thought about it until you mentioned in your class. When Job ends, what do we always remember? He was rewarded with so much more, wasn't he? And you read there, he said, even his friends came and brought items to him. Were these the same friends that he had chapters and chapters earlier? Who basically had disagreement with and difficulty and stuff like that? That when someone remains true to God, even those who didn't believe, he becomes an example, doesn't he? She becomes an example, doesn't she? Is that when you stay with the Lord, remember what 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 says. Have a hope, have an answer to all of the hope that is in you. How do you have hope when everything's going wrong around you? Because I know that God is there. And the truth is that as we've already looked through this Christian life, and the imagery from the Old Testament is that life is difficult as a Christian. It is. 2 Timothy 3:12. But it is impossible when you're not a Christian. You can't do it. We just read 1 Corinthians 10:13. God provides a way out. That is a blessing. You ever think of that? You ever think of that as Christians? He provides those way out for temptation? That is not afforded to the non-Christian. This lesson is designed for two people. If you are not a Christian this morning, we have some who are not Christians this morning. You do not have the blessings that are found with God, the help in this life. And that is why God has clearly and beautifully laid out for all of us to see that we must hear God's word, Romans 10:17. The word that tells us the will of God. God will not drop down answers from the sky into our mind. He will clearly show us what we need to know in His word. That we are to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, John 8:24. And that we must confess Jesus Christ as the Son of God, Romans 10:9 and 10. And that we must repent of our sins. When we repent of our sins, we turn away. It's the word of conversion. It is leaving something and going a different direction. Luke 13:3. And ultimately, just like there was the baptism of Moses through the Red Sea, your life as a Christian doesn't begin before you are baptized into Christ. Romans 6:3 and 4. We can go on with a lot of citations in there, but if you're interested in knowing how to become a Christian today, that you want to be a part of the saved, the church that you will be added to, we want to study with you. We want to talk to you about it. We want to help you. But Christians, as you sit in this room, that is the majority of you, do you lose sight of God's plan? Do you try to find answers other places? Do you complain? Do you grumble? Do you not like what God has put into place? Do you not like doing what God has done? We've all been there. We've all been there. It was mentioned in class about sharing the fault. Sometimes, you were right. I was like, sometimes it's the big ones, but sometimes it's small. Because you know what? Is that, yeah, the big ones were the big ones, but they become the big ones because the small ones added up, didn't they? Let's handle those small ones now, Christians. Let's be stronger. We've got a body of people here in New Braunfels that are trying to be a light in this community, just like Philippians 2:15. Let us be lights in this dark world. Let people see something different in us. When everyone else wants to complain, you're the one who doesn't. When everyone else wants to go this way, I say, no, I'm going this hard path, but it's the right path. If you need prayers of this church, we want to help you as well. Whatever your need may be, please come forward as we stand.